Today on CityCast Denver.
Let me get this straight. There's old Elitches, there's new Elitches, and there might be a new Elitches?
Hopefully, according to our plans, if all goes well, we'll have a brand new Elitches, a new and improved Elitches to look forward to.
The current Elitches is opening this weekend, and with the owners planning a massive redevelopment on the land, it may be one of their last seasons ever. So we're talking everything Elitches.
That would have been so funny if they tried to move the gum tree, all the gross old gum from years and years.
Today is Thursday, April 29th, 2021. I'm Bree Davies.
I'm Paul Caroli.
And this is CityCast Denver. All right, let's take a look at the news. We're back to one of those perfect Colorado days with a high of 70 degrees and light winds. Remember that interview I did with Denver chef Frank Bonanno about the uncertain future of his flagship restaurant, Mizuna? It turns out that the owners of the building have withdrawn their application for demolition eligibility, which means maybe they're not trying to sell anymore? I don't know. We might have to give Frank a call. In immersive art news, Meow Wolf announced an official but still vague opening date of fall 2021. You may have seen the multi-story white slice of a building rise at Colfax and I-25 and wondered, what the hell is that? Well, it's an interactive museum featuring a music venue, a cafe, and retail space, and soon you can go inside it. Which Elitches is your Elitches? Are you a Northside Elitches, Gumtree Elitches, live from the Trocadero Elitches?
Or are you a new Elitches person? I'm talking downtown Elitches, Twister 2 Elitches, Six Flags Elitches.
Elitch Gardens Theme and Water Park, that's its official name by the way, is opening to the general public this weekend after being closed for a year because of the pandemic.
And with a major multi-billion-dollar redevelopment project hanging over its head, there might not be many more chances to ride the rides and see the sights. It's time to get in line. I was thinking about pulling some of that Six Flags music for this.
Oh, the Vanga Boys?
Is that da 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 da?
Yes, I work out to their whole record. So yes.
Really?
Are you talking about the Vanga Boys?
Hallie Haglund grew up going to Old Elitches. Since then, she's moved to Hollywood and just, won 3 Emmys for her work on The Daily Show with Trevor Noah. No big deal.
Well, let's get started. We're talking old Elitches, new Elitches, all the Elitches. Hallie, we got to start with you. What's your relationship with Elitch Gardens?
A fan. Always a lifetime fan. I grew up going to Elitch's, the North Denver location. I haven't had a ton of experience with the downtown one.
Okay.
But yeah, it looms large in my childhood, going with my family, going with my friends from my neighborhood, the log ride, the gum tree, the whole 9 yards. Yeah.
The gum tree. I've been reading about that online. What is that? Because that does not conjure an image in my mind.
Oh, it's gross.
It's gross, but in my memory, it wasn't gross at all. Like, when you're young and colors have this visceral beauty for you. Like, I remember it. So it was a tree when you were waiting to go on the log ride, formerly known as the Splinter. But I think there was more than one. It was like a cluster of trees because they ran out of space on just one, where people would stick their chewing gum on the tree when you were waiting in line. And I just remember not being disgusted at all, but thinking it was like a thing of beauty as I marveled at it.
I remember it as sort of this existential threat that standing in line, someone would push you into it if you weren't careful. There was a guardrail between you and the gum tree, but it was still like that. Like, if I push you hard enough, you might get your hair stuck in the gum tree. But I do like this image, Hallie, of it being really pretty because gum comes in many colors. So it was like a rainbow of people's gum.
DNA just stick into the tree.
That's disgusting, by the way. I think for those of us who maybe didn't see that, that's Wow, what a gross idea. Bree, how about you? Do you remember? You must have gone to Old Elitch's, right, growing up here?
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned that the log ride was called the Splinter, Hallie, because I forgot. It was just colloquially called the log ride forever. But it was also, I think it's a lot of our most vivid memories because it was such a specific ride to Elitch's. It's my favorite ride, but basically it's themed around a sawmill. So there's all these weird scenes of mannequins like working in the sawmill, and it had this sort of like aftermarket Disney vibe about it to me. Like they weren't animatronics by any means. They were literally mannequins that moved.
Hallie, do you remember the mannequin over the log ride?
I didn't remember it until you brought it up, but I totally remember it. Yeah.
Okay, so I knew we were going to have this conversation about Elitch's, and I think now is probably the time to reveal that I've never been to New Elitch's, Old Elitch's, any of the Elitch's. So I knew I needed some help. I collected some primary sources.
Oh,
So,
Paul.
Exandra, you want to cue up our first clip? This one's a blast from the past.
My father knew Mr. Elitch pretty well, and one day Mr. Elitch said that he was starting a garden, sort of an amusement garden out in North Denver, or Northwest Denver, and we ought to come out. So we went out one Saturday with a picnic lunch. And all we had then was this with beautiful trees and a bear pit and a merry-go-round, which is all that there was at that time. But as everybody knows, it's kept on growing.
All right, so that was Laura Besser, an oral history interview recorded in 1958. She was born in 1878. So I think she was there like when it was just built. It was like brand new, maybe a decade old. Hallie, does any of Laura's experience of Elitch Gardens resonate with your experience many decades later?
I mean, I do remember that it was Elitch Gardens in the North Side location. So when I was sort of like talking to friends and family about memories for Elitch's in preparation for this, one of the people that I reached out to was my friend's dad, who is like a Colorado history expert. And one of the things he emphasized about Elitch's and Lakeside was that they were sort of some of the first places that people in Denver had to like gather. And they were sort of this big outlet for people that they didn't really have before. So this big place for people to congregate and just have diversion. And it sort of gave a social dimension to the city that it really hadn't had before. And I guess that's what it makes me think of when I hear that clip.
That makes sense too, Paul, because it's pre-Mayor Spears City Beautiful movement. So we didn't have big parks yet. And these parks really functioned as that gathering space that Hallie's talking about. Like thinking about like if we didn't have a city park or a wash park, this was probably the closest that there was, you know, a big, beautiful open space with greenery and a bear pit, which I didn't know about.
Well, yeah, I didn't know until I started looking into it that it was originally a zoo.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
All right, okay. We should talk about New Elitch's. And I have another primary source I want to share. This is a Yelp review from a user named Lauren R. She gave Elitch Gardens 3 stars. And she wrote, "As a native, I harbor a special love for Elitch Gardens, but I'm sort of jaded. You know what I remember as a child about Elitch's? The effing gardens. Where are the trees and the plants providing shade and atmosphere inside the park? Six Flags and their stupid blacktop trying to cause dehydration to make you buy more drinks." So, Hallie, how did it feel for you when you heard that Elitch Gardens was going to move? The old one was going away.
The promise of it sounded kind of exciting to have this amusement park in the middle of the city. And I think, you know, just optically, it looks so neat when you're driving by on the highway and you see this big roller coaster. But I actually, you know, I went there at least a couple times, and I remember feeling pretty disappointed and disillusioned with it. You know, I think that all the potential's there. The location is incredible. The history is there, but it's just, you know, it's unrealized.
What are they doing wrong? They brought all the rides over.
Yeah, well, but most of them are gone now. I know they had the rainbow for a little while. They still have the sea dragon, and they still have the twister. So what that Yelp review reminded me of was the greenery and the gardens are, so for me, atmosphere is everything. And it's one of the things I remember most about Old Elitch's was like the Wildcat was another roller coaster that they had at Old Elitch's that they didn't bring with them over, but it was surrounded by trees, like old mature trees. And you can't bring that with you when you create a whole new development. And I think that's truly one of the things that was missing was it just hadn't grown yet. It was really all asphalt and it was hot and it felt more corporate. And, then the Six Flags element came in and like Hallie was saying, there's this promise. And when you're a kid, it's awesome. Your city's getting a Six Flags. Like, yes, this is awesome. But it in comparison to the old one, it felt a little bit just too corporate or just like not the soul that you wouldn't recognize as a kid, but what you knew was a feeling that made you feel good to go there wasn't there.
Did they bring the carousel to the new Elitch's?
That's a good question. I don't know if it's the same carousel because it's there, but that would be a good fact check for us to see if it's the original carousel or not.
A quick pause for that fact-checking Bree just mentioned. After the interview, we did some sleuthing, and according to the historical timeline on Elitch's website, the original carousel, built in 1928, does in fact still operate at the park today. And a fun fact, it took the Philadelphia Toboggan Company 3 years to carve it by hand. Okay, let's get back to the conversation.
It takes time for a place to have character, and part of that time involves things actually growing at a place, and felt like it, succumbed to the man.
There's not enough gum on these trees.
Yeah, I saw no trees, I saw no gum, I saw no attempt at gum anywhere.
That would have been so funny if they tried to move the gum tree, all the gross old gum from years and years.
That would be so cool if they had brought part of it and just like encased it. If there was a Hall of Fame, a memory lane for Old Elitch's, that would definitely need to be an artifact in there.
All right, so Elitch's is opening this weekend, for a new season, and it's probably one of the last seasons they're going to be in operation since there's this big development happening. They're planning parks and condos and big high-rises down there. It's going to be a whole new neighborhood. I actually saw a rendering yesterday, and they had the old carousel that you all were talking about. They had it enclosed in this big glass box like it was in a museum.
Weird.
There's talk about relocating the park to somewhere else, but I don't know. Bree, what do you think? Is that going to happen?
I mean, I highly doubt it. In a different time, amusement parks make sense, but in the current state of Denver real estate, the cost to operate a park on such a large piece of land, like square footage wise, I don't think amusement parks are big money makers. So unless they put it out, I don't know, somewhere in the middle of nowhere, I don't see it being anywhere close to Denver, the Denver metro area proper, if they're going to move it. I just think they're going to dismantle it and sell off the rides and develop the area. Not to be a huge bummer, but just thinking realistically about it.
Hallie, let's say they do relocate again. What's the one thing that you'd hope they replicate from Old Elitch's that would make you feel at home going to the new Elitch's?
If they actually made an effort to, rather than like corporatize it, to sort of create a monument to the original Elitch's. There are so many places that, if you go to the new Yankee Stadium or the new Mets Stadium that have been built in the last decade, they all sort of have these spaces that are tributes to, the older iterations of what they once were. And I feel like if Elitch's did something like that, it would make it, it would connect it so much more with its own past and with what people remember about it, who, now have little kids who it would be fun to take there and tell them about their own memories. It was so fun to hear my family's memories of the place, and to sort of start that conversation among generations, I think would be really special.
That was comedy writer Hallie Haglund reminiscing about Elitches with me and my producer, Paul Caroli. By the way, we slandered New Elitches a bit when we said there was no gum. Sources close to us say that's not true. There's a gum pile near the Mind Eraser right before you get on the roller coaster. I'm just too chicken to ride that one.
This is Reese.
Hey, Reese, this is Paul Caroli from CityCast Denver. How are you this morning?
Hey, Paul. How are you?
After talking to Bree and Hallie, I had questions about the future of Elitch's. So I called up the guy who owns it, Reese Duggan, or owns part of it at least, along with our friendly neighborhood billionaire Stan Kroenke and a Canadian company called Second City Real Estate. And I won't take up too much of your time. I just have like a few questions about this River Mile thing and Elitch's. That's like the multi-billion-dollar effort to redevelop what's now Elitch Gardens into a whole new neighborhood, really.
Correct.
But I only really want to talk about the Elitch Gardens part of that, because that's what we're thinking about this week here on the show. What's the status of the park? Like where's its role in this broader, this much bigger thing?
Hopefully, according to our plans, if all goes well, we'll have a brand new Elitch's, a new and improved Elitch's to look forward to in the not too distant future.
Yeah, a new Elitch's?
Yes, a new. This current park, Elitch's, was built in the early 1990s, and you can imagine, like most things in the world, technology has advanced and trends have advanced, and so as we look at our options to develop a new Elitch's somewhere in the metro region, bigger, better, stronger, faster, I think would be the phrase.
So you said somewhere in the metro region. Do you have a spot picked out?
We don't yet. We're actively looking at a number of sites and narrowing them down. So I'm getting more excited about the prospects for a new park.
I'm not sure if you'd have a number right now. I mean, I imagine the pandemic changed a lot, but how many years left do you think the current Elitch's has?
I'm not sure. There's a lot of variables there. Pandemic being one, economy being two, development cycles being three. So I can't really answer that, but I can tell you that we're actively working on development of a new park.
So there's one specific thing that the other person we talked to about Old Elitch is like really, really locked in on, is like, this to me was Elitch Gardens. And I wonder if you think there's space for a gum tree at the new Elitch's.
I love that. I love those stories of the old park. We definitely have room for a gum tree, but I think that's an indication how times have changed, perhaps. You know, one of the big issues that we talk about as we plan a new park is water consumption. It's something that's changed since the first Elitch's was around back in the day. No one talked about water consumption and xeriscaping and how we're good stewards of water. That being said, I'm sure we can find a place for a single gum tree.
Yeah. All right, Reese, I'm going to get in touch with you to talk more about the River Mile at some point, but I think that is everything I need for today, and thank you so much for the time.
Of course. You let me off light this morning. Those were easy.
All right.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. We want to hear your memories of all the Elitch's. Record a voice memo on your phone and email it to us at denver@citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye!
Disneyland has the Tomorrowland, and Epcot. Elitch's has
Gum.
the gum area.
We have the gum area.